D-Day, June 6, 1944. It's a date that echoes through history. In the annals of World War II, the Allied invasion of Normandy stands as a monumental event, a turning point that shifted the tide of war in Europe.
Ow.
But beyond the strategic significance, beyond the political ramifications, there are the stories of the men who were right in the thick of it, the soldiers who stormed the beaches of Normandy. John, a veteran of the Royal Army Medical Corps, vividly recalls the scene as Allied troops took possession of Sword Beach after heavy fighting. He describes the beach as absolutely littered with dead Germans, wounded Germans, our dead and wounded. As he moved further inland, John noticed something distressing. Casualties were mounting, and many of them were not immediately being attended to. This led him to make a critical decision. We had to get much closer to the front line to deal with the casualties as they occurred. We couldn't wait for them to filter through to the casualty clearing station. So John and his team set up a small field hospital close to the action. Working tirelessly, he treated the wounded under the constant threat of incoming shells. It was incredibly hard work, and at times overwhelming. Despite the danger, he saw it as his duty to be where he was needed the most. This act of courage and quick thinking by John likely saved many lives. Jim, a member of the Durham Light Infantry, landed on Gold Beach. His account offers a glimpse into the chaos and confusion of the initial landings. We waded ashore knee-deep in water. I can feel the bump of the landing craft as we go up and down. And then suddenly, the ramp is down. I looked towards the rear of the craft and saw a couple of dead soldiers lying there, killed by the naval gunfire. It was a baptism of fire, and Jim and his comrades quickly found themselves in the midst of fierce fighting. But despite the danger, there was a sense of camaraderie and purpose among the soldiers. For many, D-Day was not just a battle, it was a defining moment in their lives. For Tom, a paratrooper with the King's Own Scottish Borderers, it was a day that started with a great deal of apprehension and ended with a profound sense of relief and triumph. When asked how he felt before jumping into the unknown, he says he was scared. Very scared. It was only when I got out of the aircraft and saw the others that my fears left me. The camaraderie among the paratroopers was palpable as they prepared for their assault on the enemy. It was a brotherhood forged in the fires of war, a bond that would sustain them through the horrors of combat. As they waited for the signal to jump, there was a mixture of tension and excitement. For these young men, they knew that what they were about to do was dangerous, but they were also ready to fulfill their duty. When the order to jump finally came, it was a rush of adrenaline and the thrill of adventure. Tom and his fellow paratroopers leaped from the aircraft, each man carrying with him the hopes and dreams of a nation. Their objective, to secure a foothold in enemy territory and pave the way for the massive Allied invasion. What followed was a heart-stopping descent, a free fall that seemed to last an eternity. As Tom and his comrades floated towards the ground, they were vulnerable, exposed, and utterly alone. The safety of the aircraft now a distant memory, they were on their own. Amidst the chaos of the battle, Tom and his unit distinguished themselves through acts of bravery and selflessness. Their story is one of courage and resilience, a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity. They fought with valor, tenacity, and unwavering determination. However, amidst the chaos and carnage, there were moments of humanity that transcended the brutality of war. There were instances of kindness, camaraderie, and compassion that offered a glimmer of hope in the darkest of times. These were the stories that made D-Day more than just a battle. It was a defining moment in human history, a reminder of the capacity for both great evil and extraordinary good that resides in the human heart. Joe, a British sergeant, landed with the North Hampshire Regiment on one of the most perilous sections of all, Juno Beach. Joe's account highlights the intense struggle for control over Juno Beach. The Germans put up stiff resistance, and the casualties were heavy. The men fought bitterly for every inch of ground, but slowly, with heavy loss, they pushed forward. It was a brutal, grinding process, but the soldiers pressed on. Joe's leadership and bravery were instrumental in helping his unit secure their objectives. Under his guidance, they overcame numerous obstacles and heavy losses to establish a bridgehead from which the rest of the invasion force could land. As the Allies gained a foothold in Normandy, the battle for the beaches was just the beginning. The real challenge lay in securing and expanding their positions in the face of relentless German counterattacks. It was a test of endurance, a battle of attrition that demanded the utmost from the Allied forces. But the soldiers stood firm, dug in, reinforced their defenses, and prepared for the long haul. They knew that the fate of the invasion, perhaps even the course of the war, rested on their shoulders. With unwavering determination, they held their ground, repelling attack after attack. Their courage and resilience became the cornerstone of the Allied presence in Normandy, laying the foundation for the eventual liberation of Western Europe. Amidst the chaos and bloodshed, acts of individual brilliance and collective heroism emerged. Soldiers like John, Jim, Tom, and Joe exemplified the best of their generation. Men who displayed extraordinary bravery, quick thinking, and selflessness in the face of overwhelming odds. Their actions, big and small, saved lives, turned the tide of battle, and left an enduring legacy of courage and resilience. The physical toll on these men was immense. They endured exposure, exhaustion, and injuries, often without proper medical attention. For many, the constant threat of death by gunshot or artillery fire was a grim reality, yet they persevered, driven by a sense of duty and camaraderie. The psychological toll was equally heavy. The sights and sounds of war, the loss of friends, and the constant stress of combat took a heavy toll on their mental health. Many soldiers grappled with fear, anxiety, and the trauma of their experiences. Yet they carried on, finding strength in the bonds they formed with their fellow soldiers. One of the most haunting aspects of D-Day was the sheer scale of the operation. It involved thousands upon thousands of troops, ships, and aircraft, all meticulously coordinated to execute a near-impossible task. The logistical challenges were immense, as were the risks. Soldiers landed on heavily defended beaches, knowing that failure was not an option. The success of the entire invasion rested on their shoulders, yet they performed their duties with precision and courage, overcoming obstacles that would have daunted lesser troops. It's important to remember that for many of these veterans, D-Day was not just a battle, it was a turning point in their lives. It was a day that tested their courage, their resilience, and their humanity. It was a day that left an indelible mark on their souls. These brave souls who stormed the beaches of Normandy on that fateful day in 1944 were not just soldiers. They were heroes. They were ordinary men who did extraordinary things. They were the best of their generation, the finest examples of courage, resilience, and selflessness.